At 6:17 a.m., 2 German Leopards, specifically a 6 variants call sign Atlas and Hector, faced what we call suicide. Across the foggy plains of eastern Ukraine, an entire Russian armored brigade advanced. Dozens of T-90 and T-72 tanks, along with infantry fighting vehicles and transport trucks heavy with ammo. 23 minutes later, that force was in ruins. Satellite imagery and verified ground combat. Reports confirmed at least 7 Russian tanks and 6 armored vehicles destroyed, their hulls still burning on the road where the assault began. The outcome shocked even our veteran planners. 2 tanks manned by just 4 crewmen had stopped an offensive force 10 times their size. Not through luck, but through tactical precision, coordination, and absolute discipline. Had those Leopards fallen, Ukraine's eastern defenses would have collapsed, opening a direct corridor toward Donetsk. Instead, they turned the field into a strategic lesson in warfare. How disciplined crews, superior optics, and rapid decision-making outmatches brute force. This tactical action raises one haunting question. How did 2 crews survive a sky filled with hostile drones, artillery, and guided missiles routing an entire armored brigade? At dawn, on October 21st, 2025, our 2 Leopard 2A6 tanks, called Atlas, and Hector deployed advanced thermal optics to spot a Russian armored brigade heavy with T-90M and T-72 B3 tanks long before they could respond. Tactically, that early detection turned a quiet sector near the Vovcha River into a lethal kill zone. Those German-built Leopards, run by Ukraine's 33rd Mechanized Brigade, relied on advanced thermals, painting Russian armor as bright white heat signatures against the cold landscape. This gave our crews a decisive edge in a battle where first sight means first strike. Videoed. Atlas acquired a T-90M at 3.6 kilometers. Thermals easily cut through the morning. Fog exposing hot idling engines and turrets turned blindly downrange. The Russian column, marching in a predictable formation, had no idea it was already trapped in our Western Tech crosshairs, as those onboard fire control sensors fed precise targeting coordinates to their heavy main guns. Atlas unleashed the first round, a DM-63, kinetic armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding, sabot traveling 1750 meters per second, slamming into the T-90M's turret and detonating the ammunition locker in a fiery blast, sending heavy black smoke curling skyward. In my analysis, this devastating hit, documented in defense intelligence reports, exploited a fatal flaw in Russian armor, unprotected, poorly stored ammunition that turns a single penetration into a complete catastrophe. That T-90M turret launched off like a lid under extreme pressure, a stark reminder that even modernized Russian armor carries vulnerabilities no add-on plating can mask. Hector, hull down in a shallow draw, held its fire for a second. The crew hunted for their next target through those same lethal thermal optics. A Leopard's capability to deliver such precise shots stems from their Rheinmetall L-55 gun outranging Russian equivalents, outranging enemy barrels by nearly a kilometer. According to 2026 combat assessments, this standoff range allowed Atlas and Hector to neutralize threats while remaining outside the enemy's lethal envelope. This doctrine has gutted 197 Russian tanks in Donetsk since September 2026, according to tactical reports. The synergy between both armored assets operated with lethal mechanical precision, their networked telemetry serving as the command glue for this cooperative hunter-killer pair. One observes, the other fires, and both maneuver like phantoms, Atlas's commander scanning through a panoramic optic-fed live thermal to targets to Hector, which instantly swung its turret, locking a T-72, descending the adjacent slope. The second Leopard fired another DM-63, punching straight through the T-72's front plate, igniting an internal fire that consumed the crew cabin within seconds, just as recorded in combat footage during a similar engagement near Pikrosk. Such tactical synergy transcends mere raw force. It relies on advanced digital systems that allow crews to distribute battlefield intelligence faster than hostile communication networks could respond. These roughly 100 active Leopards, supplied by NATO, maintain a 1-to-5 kill ratio against Russian heavy armor per Oryx's October 2026 data, proving that network sensors serve as a force multiplier. No isolated armor could ever match. These superior thermal sights, capable of cutting through thick fog and smoke, provide our crews absolute situational awareness. While hostile crews remain blind in the dark, their outdated optics failing to match our sensor resolution, the adversary, utilizing modernized T-90 and T-72 tanks, 2,000 of which are scheduled for upgrades by 2036, according to TASS. They lacked the sensory edge to counter Ukraine's technological superiority. When Atlas's gunner engaged that round, was more than kinetic energy. It was the terminal link of a data chain that processed topography, ballistics, and laser telemetry in milliseconds, a doctrine we analyze as tactical decision, dominance. The tactical implications rippled far beyond this sector, proving their ability to blunt Russian armor with merely 2 tanks redefines the rules of engagement, where network systems and training dominate Moss. Their brigade among 26 failed attacks across 45 kilometers of Donetsk in October 2026 bled armor because they lacked the Leopard's superior digital optics. Share your assessment. Do advanced sensors make armor like the Leopard invulnerable, or are drones the decisive threat? The true test began when enemy counter-battery fire saturated the sky. Seconds after their armor was neutralized, Russian artillery poured high explosives across the plain, and infantry fighting vehicles fired sweeping bursts, blanketing the sectors where Atlas and Hector were last plotted. To survive, our Leopard crews executed established Western armored doctrine: disrupt the enemy's cycle, blind their sensors, and never remain static long enough to become targets. Their primary weapons were smoke, velocity, and displacement. Both platforms deployed rapid volleys of multispectral defensive smoke grenades, forming dense thermal screens laced with metallic particulates. This screen defeated infrared cameras' laser, rangefinders, and aerial optics, turning the Leopards into phantom signatures on enemy displays. Inside that screen, they immediately reversed, pivoted, sliding into superior firing angles, faster than telemetry could update on hostile digital screens. The goal was never complete invisibility, but to disrupt every sensor trying to track them. Russian surveillance drones struggled to relay targeting data, scrambled by thermal masking and jamming that neutralized artillery calibration. I agree with analysts that Russian batteries in late 2026 wasted rounds chasing ghost targets, masked by smoke. Our tank commanders exploited that gap by repositioning every 200 meters, practicing a doctrine called leapfrog mobility, where one fires while the other maneuvers. This tactical tempo kept at least one weapon ready while denying the enemy a predictable line of fire. Shrapnel shredded the terrain, blasts rocked the earth. Yet both crews maintained their discipline. Secure battle networks kept comms tight and brief, range wind heading, and velocity streamed straight to tactical maps inside their turrets. while their adversaries still relied on legacy voice nets. The Leopards fought using synchronized data streams that updated in real time, enabling immediate corrections without exposing themselves. Through the haze, hostile armor advanced blindly across open fields, wasting ammunition. The lead gunner targeted a flash through thermal optics, unleashing a high explosive shell directly into the hull, detonating their onboard magazine. The wingman from Defilade spotted another flanking threat and fired an armor-piercing round, neutralizing their turret, scattering the exposed crew. This rapid cycle of fire and maneuver shattered enemy cohesion, turning mass numbers into absolute chaos. As smoke and fog merged, visibility fell below 50 meters. Enemy artillery began hitting their own forward lines, verified by our radio intercepts across open military frequencies, unsecured. Meanwhile, our Leopards slipped forward in silence, keeping engines low to suppress. Thermal signature. They utilized terrain as armor ridges, embankments, and shallow defilades, absorbed shrapnel while masking their positions. The engagement became a cold dance of survival. One armor unit masking while the other targeted, then swapping roles in seconds. Their L-55 guns stabilized perfectly on the move, letting Atlas strike targets without stopping. Combat demands a strict tempo. Fire, maneuver, communicate, unpredictable, relentless execution. Any hesitation increased the risk of detection by hostile recon drones still hunting through the gray mist. Our tactical debriefs later confirmed that this relentless maneuvering cut enemy artillery accuracy by over 60%. By never lingering past 90 seconds in a single coordinate, Atlas and Hector forced enemy gunners to chase ghosts. Velocity replaced, steel, perfect timing replaced, heavy armor. Every tactical dash bought crucial seconds the enemy couldn't reclaim. Inside those steel hulls, heat vibration and suffocating pressure pushed the crews to their absolute limits. They managed vital systems in total darkness, relying on discipline, not instinct. One tactical misstep, a blown smokescreen, or bad pivot would mean instant destruction. In combat, discipline holds lines where luck simply fails. Once the combat smoke cleared, destroyed, enemy vehicles burned across the valley. Barrages slowed. Forward observers had lost visual tracking. The enemy brigade attacked exactly how they had trained for decades. Strictly by textbook, not adaptation. Their armor spearheaded the push in columns, with transport vehicles trailing too close behind engines, screaming, kicking up dust, in heavy plumes. We detected zero drone reconnaissance flying ahead, no integrated sensor networks watching their flanks. Only raw momentum steered by static battle orders. This rigid approach works well in theory, but fails instantly when encountering a far more adaptive adversary. Our units, Atlas and Hector, tracked the advance on thermal sights, every hostile target glowing brightly on their tactical screens. The hostile crews advanced with hatches open, their commanders completely exposed. Their tactical radios jammed with interference as they struggled to coordinate through the haze. Our modern Leopard crews, utilizing a shared tactical feed, designated targets silently. This seamless synergy turned two armored platforms into one lethal system, while the hostile elements operated as completely disconnected assets blind their mutual flanks. An enemy fighting vehicle overextended, its 30mm cannon engaged, firing bursts toward Hector. Impacts peppered the Leopard's flank, but failed to penetrate, neutralized by advanced composite plates and heavy reactive armor. Internally, the crew barely registered the impact. The spall liner, a protective barrier designed to absorb fragments, kept the crew compartment secure and quiet. That short window allowed me to issue the next tactical command. Hector's gunner answered instantly, sending a single heat round across 1.4 kilometers. The round punched through their thin armor, turning the entire vehicle into a raging torch instantly. It was a minor clash in our larger campaign, but it proved a vital lesson. Survivability is defined by signature management, not armor thickness. The enemy assault crumbled the moment their lead elements began to burn. Without air support or electronic eyes, the trailing armor had no idea where our lethal fire originated. Their panic commander ordered all artillery to engage, resulting in absolute tactical chaos. Shells wasted themselves on empty dirt while our Leopards quietly repositioned, staying completely invisible within the rising smoke. Our onboard battle networks updated targets every few seconds, automatically adjusting for ground slope and thermal interference, while enemy gunners still relied on primitive voice corrections over jammed radio nets. In my analysis, this clash represents the fundamental war of doctrines. The enemy still relies on sheer mass and raw volume, more armor, more artillery, more mass. Our Western-trained crews operate with high precision and speed. Atlas and Hector did not struggle harder. They fought smarter, cutting every wasted move from their workflow. They used their thermal sensors to analyze, reading the operational rhythm of the enemy, knowing where they fired when their reloads occurred and how long each pause lasted. We executed every strike inside that brief window of adversary confusion just before their next heavy barrage. When enemy BMPs and T-72s closed, our Leopards had already redeployed along a shallow embankment. Their turrets tracked in unison, driven by network telemetry. 2 rounds left the barrels within mere seconds of each other, intersecting in flight and slamming into separate targets across the same ridge. The lead tank's frontal armor split open, the second vehicle's tracks blew apart, and the advance stalled. Enemy infantry leaped from their carriers, scattering for cover, completely blind to the fact that our optics tracked their every move on our screens. Our crews proved that in modern warfare, dominated by electronic sensors, a single hesitation is a death sentence. The enemy relied on sheer numbers and doctrine. Our Leopards answered with precision and lethal speed. The difference was measured in the burning wrecks strewn across the open plain. The airspace above us quickly turned into a lethal hunting ground when their drones arrived. Enemy operators launched Orlan 10, en reconnaissance, drones to locate our tanks. Peering through the thinning smoke, backed by Lancet loitering munitions, engineered to dive on targets with devastating precision. The air buzzed with the high-pitched whine of electric rotors, each packing a sensor capable of tracking the faintest thermal signature. For our crew's survival meant reacting faster than those aerial eyes could lock on. An Orlan 10 circled low feeding coordinates to a ground unit directing a Lancet toward our defensive ridge. The threat arrived from the northwest, hugging the tree line to mask its radar profile before diving directly into tactical alert. Inside Hector, tactical feeds flashed crimson under incoming threat warnings. In under 3 seconds, they cut speed, deploying multispectral masking smoke, reversing directly beneath a collapsed roof ruined by prior artillery fire, shattered during previous bombardment. This falling debris created a shield severing the drone's line of sight, causing the diving warhead to strike those heavy ruins instead of armor. The detonation shredded timber and scattered shrapnel, yet Hector remained unscathed. That instant tactical choice, seeking immediate cover instead of fleeing, turned a lethal threat into a failed attack. Atlas, holding 200 meters away, he tracked another drone, diving through smoke. Our crews fired tracers upward, not to destroy the target, but to disrupt its optical guidance. Those blinding chemical trails merged with smoke blinding the drone's thermal sensors and throwing off its primary navigation code. The dropped explosive payload detonated harmlessly midair, the energy absorbed by smoke. Right after both, Leopards repositioned, keeping engines quiet, slipping behind a shallow ridge before another drone could lock. Defense analysts now observe that these rapid, micro-level, split-second reactions have halved the enemy's loitering threat rates across the entire theater throughout late 2026. Every second lost during initial detection, and defensive response decides between survival and catastrophic loss. This advanced integration combines multiple thermal feeds, acoustic arrays, and tight crew discipline triggered a response entirely automatic. Decision cycles were bypassed. They executed on instincts carved by the drills. Modern drone warfare demands speed over steel. The Leopard survival proves that even the heaviest main battle tank falls if it cannot adapt instantly. Passive armor absorbs blast fragments, but it cannot escape persistent reconnaissance in the sky. By weaponizing the terrain and natural environment into our defensive doctrine, the crews transformed vulnerability into strategic dominance. Both elements operated under persistent reconnaissance, yet their tactical survival relied on fusing technology with instinct against swarms of cheap sensors and smart munitions. Brutal firepower alone does not keep a crew alive. It requires the capability to scan the sky, react instantly, and displace before the follow-on strike hits. By 6:40 a.m., the rumble of armor had gone cold. What began as a massed armored assault ended in ruin and complete disarray across the sectors east of the Vavha River. Over a dozen enemy tanks and armored personnel carriers burned in position as their remnants fled in disarray. Our two maneuvering Leopards, Atlas and Hector, broke contact cleanly engines to steady our crews breathing through the residual acrid smoke of battle. Two armored assets neutralized a brigade. This action represents more than a tactical victory. It establishes a new doctrine of warfare. Mass and raw numbers no longer dictate outcomes, tactical competence does. The Leopard survival hinged on intensive training and split-second decision cycles, not luck, or armor thickness. Every maneuver followed a strict rhythm, forged through hundreds of drills. Acquire, strike, conceal, reposition. In those split seconds, hesitation meant death, and training became instinct. When we later reviewed satellite imagery of the sector, we counted dozens of destroyed Russian hulls scattered across several kilometers. According to independent intelligence assessments, the enemy's armored losses in this sector reached 1/5 of the brigade's total assets in under 30 minutes. The imagery proved what no report could hide: a shattered push against two defensive crews who refused to break. Every Leopard crew operated as a single unified mind, where the commander's voice and gunner's optics aligned within seconds. Inside those hulls, every action mattered. The loader's cadence, the driver's maneuvering, the gunner's aim, all synced into a rhythm, leaving no room for panic. Atlas and Hector didn't win simply because they fired first. They prevailed because they fought as one. That distinction between reaction and true coordination is what keeps a small force resilient under pressure. The enemy brigade, built on massed steel, lacked that cohesion. Their armor operated as individuals, not as parts of a system, and each loss fractured their formation further. Once command and control faltered, every vehicle became blind and isolated. The Leopards, by contrast, turned constant communication into a weapon. Once their onboard sensors fused, visual, thermal, and acoustic feeds, their calculations took mere seconds, while the adversary needed minutes. That temporal advantage, enough for one shot or one evasive maneuver-defined victory, military. Analysts study the VTA engagement as a classic case study in the lethality of elite crews. If every frontline company fielded 2 or 3 teams with the spatial awareness and lethality of Atlas and Hector battlefield, dynamics would shift across Donetsk. That dawn proved one thing beyond question. Dominance belongs not to the side, displaying raw mass, but to those crews who translate total chaos into control. This duel between 2 Leopard, 2 A6 tanks, and an entire Russian brigade was not merely a skirmish. It was a warning shot to global militaries. It demonstrates that in modern warfare, outcomes are no longer dictated by mass or passive protection, but by the velocity of the cognition and the split-second decisions executed inside the turret. Sensor integration, discipline, and reaction times now override the physical footprint of a massive formation or raw shell weight. Atlas and Hector demonstrated what happens when tactical data training and instinct merge into unified focus, creating an asymmetric edge, sharper than armor. Their success subverted traditional doctrine, forcing military planners to ask whether technology has finally replaced mass as the key metric of dominance. This brings us to the critical question. If just 2 tanks can halt a brigade, what happens when 20 highly synchronized crews fight side by side in a unified tactical network? Would that completely alter the balance of this conflict? Or reshape how every army prepares for future combat? Perhaps the era of massed attrition is ending, and the age this cognitive campaign has already begun. Perhaps this is just the opening salvo of a massive doctrinal evolution yet to unfold. Tell me, is the future of combat won by heavy armor or intellect? Directing it? Drop your tactical brief below, and to make sure to follow and subscribe to Military Force, where every engagement tells